When I say my favorite 3 words, Tokyo Disney Resort, you may think of rides, you may think of snacks, you may even think of the beautiful hotels. Well, mostly beautiful, but for me, the thing that makes this place so special is the areas. They can transport you to the past, to alternate visions of the future, and to these fantastical imaginary places. And I think that's what makes these parks so special and so memorable. And it's also what makes these 2 parks complement each other so well. Every area of each park is so different. In Tokyo Disneyland, you have the more nostalgic, classic Disney Castle Park areas, and then over at DisneySea, you just have these things that you've never ever seen before, with so many nooks and crannies and rich details to explore. So in this video, we're going to talk about every single area of Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo DisneySea, and we're going to do everyone's favorite thing to do when you have several things that you like. You're going to rank them. We're going to rank the things. And if you're new to the channel and you're thinking, who is this person? Why should I even listen to them? Hello, I'm Jordan. I'm a Brit who's been living in Tokyo for over 5 years now. I go to the parks an awful lot. And whilst it puts a strain on my marriage at times, it also means that I do know far too much about these silly places. If you want to know more about them, then please do subscribe to the channel so you can check out all of my videos in the future. And if you really like me, then there's a Patreon down there as well. You know what to do. A huge thank you to everyone who goes over there. And I have to say, I adore these parks. I love every area of both of them. Except for one. There is only one area that I would just hands down flatten and rebuild. And that area is World Bazaar. And you may be scratching your head thinking, where's that? Is that the globe thing at the front of DisneySea? No, World Bazaar is what they called the Main Street area, the entrance area with all the shops and everything of Tokyo Disneyland. And it was called World Bazaar, allegedly, because they wanted to have different areas of the world showcased here. But then somewhere along the line, it just became an American street like the other ones, but they didn't change the name for whatever reason. And if you've been to any other Disney park that has a main street, so, sorry Shanghai, not you, you'll very quickly notice that it's not just the name that's unique here, but also this is the only one that's covered up. And some people like it. I am not one of these people. For me, it makes the whole thing feel so fake. It makes the forced perspective of the buildings not really work. Yes, okay, we get rain. I get it, we get rain. It rains here sometimes. You know where else it rains sometimes? Every other Disney park. But also, Disneyland Paris gets a significant amount of rain. And they came up with a wonderful solution. So you can have the open streets of Main Street, but then behind the shops on either side, there are these indoor arcades, which are not only a great way to get away from the harsh weather, but also if there's a parade coming down the main street, you can walk through there without having to push through all the crowds. And they're just gorgeous areas to explore as well, that tie into the other areas of the park that they're leading to at the end. Oh, and I wish we could have something like that. I just think it's absolutely glorious. And it's a real shame because, unlike the next one on this list, World Bazaar will never be flattened and rebuilt. It will never be fixed, I don't think, because the return on investment that they would get for flattening this area and rebuilding something better is next to nothing, right? There are other ways that World Bazaar is different from other main streets as well. This is the only one where you can actually access other areas of the park halfway along the street. This is to help with crowd flow and, prioritizing crowd flow over the sort of niceness and warmth of an area and intimacy of an area is something you're going to see mentioned in a lot of the Tokyo Disneyland areas in this video. And it's not just the cover that spoils this for me. We don't have a train, so you don't have that kinetic energy of the train going over. You don't go through the tunnel and then get the big reveal of the castle at the end of Main Street. You don't hear the ringing of the train bell in the distance and, make the space feel like it's much bigger than it is. Instead, you're closed in and it feels smaller than it is. Whilst our World Bazaar does have some windows that have some fun nods to the Oriental Land Company, the owners and operators of Tokyo Disney Resort, and some of the people who worked at Disney who made it happen, it's nowhere near the richness that some of the other parks, especially California, have with their window displays. One thing that I will give World Bazaar some huge credit for, though, is The magic store. I love this shop. My daughter always buys something from there. And just going in and asking one of the magicians to show you one of the products, it's always one of those really nice encounters that you get. So keep the magic shop, flatten everything else, extend the train over here. Yeah, let's fix World Bazaar, because I'm not a fan. As soon as I thought, I'm going to do a ranking video of all the lands, I knew World Bazaar was going right at the bottom. The rest of the list was not so easy. But once I thought about it for a while, yeah, the next one became pretty clear to me as well. And this is a tricky one because it's currently going through some big changes, so this video is going to get dated pretty quickly when I mention this next area, and hopefully, if you're watching this video in the future, it's one of the best areas now. But as of the recording, Tomorrowland at Tokyo Disneyland, there's some great rides, like it's a great collection of rides, or it was, but it's just so much flat, grey concrete. It's by far the least cohesive area in either park. The way, you know, like many Tomorrowlands around the world, it has gone from being a look at the future to somewhere that we can put Disney properties that are vaguely futuristic in any way. And that doesn't really seem to be changing anytime soon. You know, Space Mountain and Buzz Lightyear just closed down, and while the Space Mountain replacement looks very, very cool, and it's super impressive that we're not attaching some kind of movie franchise to it, it's gonna be Space Mountain, probably Space Mountain Earthrise, if the rumors are to be believed. But the Buzz Lightyear ride changing to a Wreck-It Ralph version of exactly the same ride system did make me a little less optimistic about the future. I'm excited about the ride, and I think it's great that we're getting something different. You know, there are plenty of Buzz Lightyear shooting rides out there in the world. It's cool that Tokyo are going to have another unique ride, but yeah, I don't think Tomorrowland's getting fixed anytime soon, thematically. Still, it does seem like they're going to be fixing the flat, grey, concrete-y thing that I just complained about. And we can already see a bit of this over by Baymax. That ride adds so much kinetic energy to the area, but we also have the flooring, it's tiled instead of just concrete. We have these interesting light fixtures and things. And from the concept art, that's basically an idea of the direction we're going to be going in the future. But, you know, we're still going to have to grapple with the fact that Monsters, Inc. is there, and it doesn't really make any sense. If you want to hear what I would love to do with a bit of armchair imagineering, I'd love to see them lose Star Tours, put something that can have some kinetic energy there, and change that whole back area into a Monstropolis area. We can keep Tony Solaroni, but he could become a monster instead of an alien, and we'll make that a whole, like, Monsters pizzeria. And then, you know, there's plenty of space behind Star Tours. If we want a Star Wars land, then base it on the original trilogy and give us a really good Star Wars ride back there that actually gets looked after and all the effects will still work, because Tokyo's really good at that. So yeah, it's hard to really bang on about Tomorrowland because they are currently fixing a lot of the problems with it. Just give us a replacement for Stitch Encounter soon, please. I need to know that that attraction is going to be gone and that prime real estate is going to be used for something better. Come on, guys. I mentioned that this part of the video is going to get dated, but if you go in the near future, Tomorrowland will probably be the worst land in the whole resort because it's construction walls mostly. It's not very nice to look at right now. If you don't know, the new Space Mountain is planned to open in 2027, but I am expecting more announcements and more changes to Tomorrowland. So I don't think 2028 is going to be the new Tomorrowland is finished. I think there is more to come. So yeah, it's been pretty cool to see them fix that flooring issue, because it's all just been flat concrete for so long. And that's the same with the next land I'm going to talk about, which is Fantasyland. And I've always said Tokyo has the worst Fantasyland. It's just flat, pink concrete. It's just a path. There's no exploration to be done. There's barely any greenery. And it's always the busiest part of the park as well, which really adds to that oppressive feeling. I really don't like how Haunted Mansion is just right next to Dumbo, and you're in the Haunted Mansion queue and you can hear the Dumbo songs playing. I hate that we still have all the kind of castle fairground frontages for stuff like Snow White and Pinocchio. I would love to see them do what they've done with other parks and revamp Fantasyland and make it the more modern style that we know Disney can do. And it's always so crazy to me that while Tokyo Disneyland was in development, they were planning the refurb of California's Fantasyland and just making it absolutely gorgeous. And it's crazy that with a blank slate, they didn't have a bit of foresight and make this a bit more interesting. And you may be thinking, oh, but doesn't their Fantasyland have that gorgeous Beauty and the Beast ride and the Beauty and the Beast area? Yes, it does. And that area is very, very nice. But it almost makes the rest of Fantasyland even worse because it makes it so clear that, like, oh, this is what the whole area could be like. And it's just not. And also there are things you could say about the Beauty and the Beast area, that it isn't maybe the best use of space in such a cramped park. But it is a very nice area. I love walking through the village and approaching the castle and then seeing it in all its glory. It's a beautiful, beautiful facade. And then if you continue through over to the Fantasyland Forest Theatre as well, that's a really nice little area too. But really, that is a small portion of the entirety of Fantasyland, which is a bit of a mess. There have been plans from a long time ago to fix this area as well, even eating into Toontown and transforming that into more Fantasyland. So I think Tokyo Disneyland is in a state of becoming. I think for so long it was the, oh, if you want to go to Magic Kingdom in the 70s, you should go here. Whereas it's becoming its own thing, and I think that's a good thing, and it's exciting for the future. But the past is still very much there right now. Now, you're probably thinking, when's he going to get to DisneySea? Like, this video is about Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo DisneySea, right? Yes, it is. But if you know anything about DisneySea, it will be no surprise that most of those areas are a lot later in this video. And we're going to continue that trend. Because next up is another one that suffers from that early Tokyo Disneyland design philosophy of very wide, flat, concrete areas, and that's Adventureland. And again, some areas have been updated, some areas are very nice. The reason I put this above the other ones we've already talked about is because the New Orleans area by Pirates of the Caribbean is so sweet. It's not as big as the one in California, but it scratches that itch a little bit, and it's so nice to wander around there. I love all the small little shops that you get that really make it feel like a real place, especially considering they don't all just sell the same Mickey stuff like most of the shops in DisneySea do. For some reason in Disneyland, a lot of these shops actually sell things unique to that shop. And then when you follow through to the, quote, Polynesian area, you get the Jungle Cruise and the Western River Railroad, which are sort of built into the same building, which is cool because when you go up the Western River Railroad queue, you can get a vantage point of the whole of Adventureland, which is nice because you used to be able to do that with the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse, but that's been closed since 2021. And you're thinking, oh, because of COVID. Well, I mean, yeah, but also no, because it reopened in 2020 when the parks reopened after COVID, and then it closed for a refurb and just never came back, which is so sad. Like, just open the thing. Is it really that hard? So yeah, it loses points for that. But I just love the Adventureland theme. I like that ours is split into these two different areas, and it feels a bit more like a place where you actually want to spend a bit of time, as opposed to Fantasyland and Tomorrowland, which are wonderful rides, but not an area that you want to really take in and sit and relax in. The next one on our list is also a place that you wouldn't want to relax, but that's kind of the point. Toontown is so fun. I love how kinetic it all is. I love how explosive it is. I love that there are gags and jokes everywhere, all over the place. I love that every time you go here, you're going to see kids having the best time. Like, this is where the kids have the most fun. Here and the water fountains in front of Tower of Terror are like the best places for kids. They just love that stuff. And this is kind of the opposite of the earlier areas, but why I wanted to make this video, because if we talk about rides, you're going to think Fantasyland and Tomorrowland are the best, but Toontown is just a blast. It's so much fun. I mentioned earlier that there were plans to get rid of it, and whilst I could understand that, and I do think the area could be used better, I love it, and I would be very, very sad to see it go, because, oh, it's just so silly and so fun. I think this is an area that teaches you how to appreciate a Disney park, because in a lot of areas, especially ones we're going to talk about later, the details are there, but you really have to be looking for them. You really have to be hunting for them, and you have to constantly remind yourself everything here was placed intentionally by designers to tell a story. Whereas in Toontown, every little detail is just jumping out in your face, and you can't help but notice how much time and effort has gone into the design of the place, and how miraculous it is that these places even exist to begin with. If you're wondering how this differs from the Toontown in California, this kind of goes back to the thing I mentioned earlier of being a bit more like a museum, because other than the new mini-style studio, which is an indoor mini meet and greet, which is really, really cool and has a great queue, the rest of the land is more or less a mirror image of what Toontown was in California when it opened there. But a big difference is that our Toontown is just right there. It's very easy to get to. It feels like part of the park. Whereas the one in California, it's like, if you're not intentionally going into Toontown, you just don't go in there, right? It's out of the way, under the train tracks. And I think that's cool as an entrance, and I think it's nice as like a guest experience, but it's pretty cool that you just spend much more time in Toontown in Tokyo because it's just right there, and you just kind of pop in, and as soon as you walk past it, it invites you in, and you want to go and see all of the madness. I adore this area. It's so much fun. It's an area of the park that was added after it first opened, and you can tell because it just has a bit more of that energy. The first extra area to ever be added to Tokyo Disneyland, though, was Critter Country in 1992, and that was to coincide with the opening of its major attraction, Splash Mountain. Now, we're not going to get into that here, but just as an area, Critter Country really is a turning point for the history of Tokyo Disney Resort. This is when they said, no, we're not just going to copy the American parks, we're going to have the best version. We're going to put more money into it. We're going to break away from this, everything is flat concrete, and we're going to have levels, and the flooring is going to be detailed with animal paw prints and things, and all of the theming is going to just be so detailed, and there's going to be so much of it all around you. It's a testament to how well designed Critter Country is that it's so high up this list, despite being the smallest part of Tokyo Disneyland. It benefits massively by being right on the rivers of America. That waterway adds so much to all of the areas around it. It feels like whenever you're near the rivers of America, you can take a deep breath. Like I said, the flat, busy concrete of Fantasyland and Tomorrowland and World Bazaar, once you get to these open water, you're like, okay, this is why I came here. Yes, I do like it here. And Critter Country benefits hugely from that, whilst also having all of these cute little details. I never get tired of looking for all the little doors and windows and all the different houses that all the critters here live in. It's so sweet. And whilst in Toontown, a lot of those small details will make you laugh, here they all just make you kind of go, "Aw, look at it, it's cute." The restaurant here, Aunt Sarah's Kitchen, I'm not going to get into the food because, one, it changes so often that it's not going to be relevant, and two, it's not very good. But the scenery in here is just gorgeous. It's so sweet to be in here. And whilst the queue for Splash Mountain takes up so much of this area, the fact that a lot of that queue is just walking around Critter Country makes it quite a pleasant queue. I'll sometimes get in the queue when it's an hour or an hour and a half and think, this is going to be a slog. And it flies by because you're wandering through the land, looking at the details, and then you're walking next to the rivers of America, waving at people on the train and on the Mark Twain riverboat. And then the indoor section of the queue is really sweet as well. It shows off what the area is so good at. And if people are surprised that I'm rating this so highly, you have to realize that, okay, look at it from a distance. Look at this. Basically, the whole of Critter Country is one continuous sculpture. The Splash Mountain facade seamlessly transitions into the restaurant, which seamlessly transitions into the floor and the different levels. The restaurant goes down onto the water next to the boats. The whole thing is like one enormous sculpture. I don't even know where you begin to design something like that. This is where you really appreciate, oh wow, these Imagineers are geniuses. It's just breathtaking. And with that, we finally gonna get out of the park, hop on the monorail, go through Bayside Station, and get to Tokyo DisneySea. Yep, we're going there. So if you went into this video with the question, okay, what's the ugliest part of the most beautiful Disney park ever made? It's Port Discovery. If anyone who's been to DisneySea, this is probably not a surprise. It's Port Discovery. My friend and podcast co-host, Alex, he's a Disney Parks photographer. He's been here 20 years. You can check him out on Instagram, Blue Sky, all of the good stuff. And also, you can check out our weekly podcast, The Land of the Rising Fun. If you like listening to me, it's me with a friend talking about Tokyo Disney. So go and check that out. You'll find the link in the description. You can find it on Spotify and Apple and all the places you find podcasts as well. But yeah, he always said that it felt like when they were designing DisneySea when it opened, everyone was going all in with all these lands. They're like, oh yeah, we're gonna build a volcano and we're gonna build Venice and it's gonna be incredible. And then someone was like, oh no, you remember we're supposed to do another land as well. And they're like, oh no, oh okay. Like, that's why we had so much budget. We forgot about this other area. So yeah, Port Discovery does have a bit of that energy, especially when you get up on the second level, and there are just flat grey walls that look like construction walls, but they're there all the time. They've always been there. And I can't help but feel that there was something that was supposed to go there, and it just didn't. They just ran out of time, or ran out of money, or, both. However, this is still DisneySea we're talking about, and when you first get to this area, whether it's from above on the electric railway, or whether you're walking around the trees and you get the reveal from there, the first time you see Aquatopia, it's pretty darn cool. Especially when you see it at night time and you can see all these little water fountains jumping about and all these things just whizzing around everywhere. You don't know where they're gonna go. And then you look out to the back and you can see this dam and there's water kind of spraying through and you're like, wow, this is just on the sea? We really are just on the sea? Forgetting that you just took a monorail here, which went behind that whole area. So no, it's just a very clever illusion that they pull off. The music is amazing. Actually, the music is a little bit too amazing, to be honest. It's a bit of a problem. You know why? Because they play the soundtrack from Epcot's nighttime spectacular Illuminations Reflections of Earth. And anyone who knows anything about that soundtrack knows that it slaps. It goes hard. So if you're just kind of walking around this pretty nice area and you hear something doesn't quite match up in your head, that's like the pinnacle of epic nighttime entertainment music. And yeah, if I'm just sat having a churro looking at a Nemo ride, it just doesn't really fit. Another thing Alex always says is that he wishes there was like an aquarium here or some sort of science and learning you could do. It's something that we miss at Tokyo Disney Resort. Speaking of Epcot, right? That edutainment aspect of Disney parks. It's something we don't have very much of, and it would be really, really fitting for something like that to be in here. This is Tokyo DisneySea. We're on the sea. Let's learn a bit about the sea. Something that makes all of the areas of Tokyo DisneySea so great is that most of them have walk-through attractions, and walk-through attractions add so much to an area, especially if they're done as well as fortress explorations, let's say. A walk-through attraction in Port Discovery would add a lot to it. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a ride that I sadly never got to go on, but before it was a Finding Nemo simulator, there used to be a ride called Storm Rider, which I'm sure fit into the area and made it all a lot more cohesive than it is now. But still, the area is what it is, and I could see it changing in the future. I think there's a plot of land kind of behind it in the corner of the park, which they could extend this out to, and I'd love if they just fixed it and did it really well, because I think it's a great premise, and what's there isn't bad. But yeah, when you talk about Tokyo DisneySea, and you talk to someone who's been there for the first time, let's say, and you ask them, which area was your favorite? They could answer with any area of the park, and you would be like, oh yeah, right, yeah, it's amazing there. Yeah, I can understand that. Except Port Discovery. If I met them and they said, Port Discovery, I'd be like, are you okay? Please comment below if you are one of those people, because I don't think they exist. But yeah, worst port at DisneySea. The areas of DisneySea are called ports instead of lands. It's cute, it's all based on the sea, etc., etc. The worst port at DisneySea, Port Discovery, by a long shot. So you're probably thinking, okay, we left Disneyland now. Is the rest of the video just going to be DisneySea? No! There's actually one area at Tokyo Disneyland I think is the best area in that park. And if you're attentive and you've been here before, you may be able to figure out which one I didn't talk about yet. It's Westernland, our version of Frontierland if you're familiar with other Disney parks. Westernland, again, benefits from the rivers of America. And what did I just say about walk-through attractions adding so much to an area of the park? Well, what if you have an island that already adds a lot, right? Because it makes the area look so big. You have an island that you have to take a raft over to, and then that's an enormous walk-through attraction. That's going to add a lot to the area, isn't it? Yes, it is. You can take a train through this area and see different parts that you couldn't see anywhere else. You can take the riverboat and you can see different areas you couldn't see. Every time you get on one of these rides, you get to add more depth to this area. You realize, oh, there's even more to it. You ride Big Thunder Mountain. Something I think's amazing about the design of Big Thunder Mountain, they don't let you really see it until you're on it. You know, and you get on it and you realize, wow, they've built all of this rock work. There are these different critters that are around here. And they refuse to let you look at it for a long time. They only let you look at it speeding through it on this runaway mine train. And even if you're thinking, well, Johnny, you said it's about the land, it's not about the rides. One, I think it's different if those rides are outdoors. Two, I think a walk-through attraction is sort of part of the area, right? It's just the area. It's just a part of the area where you can walk through. And also, okay, well, let's look at the other part of it then. I can sit on a bench and just look over the rivers of America and watch the rafts go by, the canoes go by, the Mark Twain go by, Splash Mountain dropping down in the distance, Big Thunder Mountain whizzing round in the distance. The best view in the park, by a mile. Yeah, we've got lovely facades, we've got castles, and we've got mountains you can look at, but nah, that vista is something. And then, hey, what else have you got? You've got Country Bear Jamboree, you've got these saloons, you've got these cute shops that sell leatherware and handmade stuff, you've got the Hungry Bear restaurant where you can eat curry in a jail cell. It's a fun area anyway, even if you're not going to allow me to include the rivers of America, which I absolutely am allowed to include because it's very important. Don't pave over our rivers of America, please. I've just talked about basically every area of Tokyo Disneyland. I've said, yeah, they could improve it. They could, they could flatten it. They could do something new with it. That would be really cool. Not this area, please. I know it's big, okay? I know it's a big plot of land, but what, you're going to get one car's ride out of it? No, stop it. Behave yourself. Westernland at Tokyo Disneyland is when you completely forget that you were just in this urban city 5 minutes away on the train before you got here. Now you're completely transported to another world. I love this area of the park. It's the best area at Tokyo Disneyland, in my opinion. And with that said, yes, the rest of the video is going to be DisneySea. It's DisneySea, for goodness sake. Come on, of course it is. The thing that DisneySea does so well is the areas, is the detail, is the placemaking, is all of these little frivolous areas that you can explore, these little nooks and crannies that nobody else could find, but you found it. There are areas of Tokyo DisneySea that I think I still haven't been to after going here for 5 years and going there hundreds of times. Whereas Tokyo Disneyland, you feel like you basically see it all in a day. Now, did you get to go on all the rides you wanted? Probably not. But you see it all. And this is where my job writing this video got a lot more difficult because they're all fantastic. Like I said, every area of DisneySea, apart from Port Discovery, in my opinion, is one that you could put at number 1 on this list. And people would be like, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. However, the one that I put next, and I hesitate to even say it because as I'm saying it, I'm like, oh, really? Lost River Delta. And Lost River Delta is underrated. It's gorgeous. When you get on here and you see Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Crystal Skull, the longest ride name at Tokyo Disney Resort, when you see that pyramid in the distance, I just talked about areas looking big and looking vast and transporting you away from the city that you've just been in. And ooh, that does it. And then the transit steamer goes right through, which separates the land so perfectly and so coherently. Because on the one side of the river, you have the Indiana Jones, this kind of excavation site where they're discovering these things. And then on the other side, you have this playful, Mexican-themed area, which sadly in recent years, the restaurant hasn't been so great and they're not really having any atmosphere entertainment around here. But it's still a lovely area full of details. It's got those levels. like I said, it's an underrated area, or it can be. I think I personally underrate it. I think I'm currently in the act of underrating it. Because a lot of it's trees, and it doesn't jump out like, wow, like some of these other ones on this list do. But it does its job so well. And if you allow yourself to explore it, there's a lot more to explore than you think. Like I said, I think when you look on a map, you see just two sides of the river, and they're both just kind of a straight path, and you're like, okay, there's not that much going on there. Take your time and really soak it all up, because there is a lot going on here. I haven't even talked about Raging Spirits. When you get around the corner at the end, you're like, oh, I guess this area's done then, and boom! Water on fire? That's not possible! How do they do that? That's not possible! One of the first things you learn in life is water and fire equals no more fire. The water's on fire! Oh, talking about DisneySea theming gets me too excited. Lost River Delta, absolute banger of an area. So what's next, Jordan? I'm going with Mermaid Lagoon. And considering this is like the kiddie area of DisneySea, there are no interesting rides. The theater, which was by far the best thing here, has been closed again since 2020. So it doesn't have like an anchor to draw you in. It's nowhere near as mature and rich as other areas of DisneySea are, including Lost River Delta that I just talked about. But I'm a grown man who goes to Disneyland on my own. I don't need maturity to have like a nice area. And I think the colors, the way it's right on the water, the music from the film really make this area very, very pleasant. And then when you get inside, you basically have an indoor land. And you see the Triton statue, and if you look down below there, you'll see the Prince Eric statue from the film below him. And that's like an invitation to, hey, can you find this area? Because you look down there and you see people down there. You're like, ooh, how do I get there? And it's not as easy as you would think. You then go behind the statue and you get this second story view of the whole area. And let me tell you, I've been to a lot of theme parks, not just Disney ones. I've seen indoor areas tried in a lot of places. Even amazing theme parks like Fantasyland in Germany. Indoor areas are not easy to do. They very often don't look very good. Especially one that's over 20 years old. Mermaid Lagoon looks pretty great for that. It looks pretty fantastic. The colors all still pop. It's a very pleasant area to explore. It's sort of like, even though it is basically a straight path past all those little flat rides inside, it doesn't feel like it. It feels meandery. You've got theming to look at. You've got the little water play area there. The shops at the end are so sweet. There's a giant whale. The shop is inside a sleeping whale that's opening its eyes. Like, how cool is that? And then, again, going back to the way that walkthrough attractions add so much to an area, you could be forgiven for walking straight past this absolute hidden gem called Ariel's Playground. It's a playground. It's for little kids, Jordan. I'm not going in there. Yes, you are. Come on, let's go. Because this is a gorgeous themed area. It's so cool. And there is no map. There's no chart. Well, that's a lyric from the Sinbad song, if you don't know. We'll get there. But yes, you have to just explore it. And there are fun interactive things. It's silly. And if you're lucky and if you're persistent, you'll find that Eric statue inside Ariel's grotto. Hey, maybe you'll even find Chip from Beauty and the Beast if you're really perseverant. But it's just a lovely area, and again, it adds so much to the whole area that it's in. I really like Mermaid Lagoon, okay? Okay. And the cool thing about Mermaid Lagoon, the cool thing about like every area of DisneySea, but especially this one, is that it complements other areas. When you come out of the oppressive, walled-in, rocked-in, cavey, mysterious island, we'll get there. Don't worry, I'm gonna talk about that one. You get to this open area that just feels huge, and all of the colors are light and playful, and you hear this Little Mermaid do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, and it feels like you can take a breath. You're like, okay. Mysterious Island's amazing, but it's a little bit scary. Like, now you're like, oh. And the way that they achieve that is that you've got Mermaid Lagoon on one side, and then you've also got Arabian Coast sort of off in the distance on the other side, and it all just feels so open, and everything is so brightly colored, without being, in your face, without being unrealistic or anything. It's just, it creates this whole open space. It's like, And also, it's like you've already seen some amazing stuff, and you're like, oh, there's still more? There's still so much more in this park? Yes, there is. And yeah, right across from there is Arabian Coast. Whilst Mermaid Lagoon is very much a Little Mermaid land, Arabian Coast is like kinda sorta an Aladdin land. I think they took a few more liberties. I think they were a bit more free with it, and they weren't so bogged down in making it like you're in the movie, let's say. Which, I mean, Mermaid Lagoon isn't either. Yes, when you're in that Ariel's grotto, you're like, oh, it's the place from the film. But everything else is like, it's a theme park land that's inspired by the film. It's not Cars Land. You know, it's not like when you go to Cars Land in California or Adventure and you're like, oh, this is exactly like the movie. It's like I'm in the movie. That's pretty cool. No, Mermaid Lagoon's not like that, and Arabian Coast isn't like that either. Because if they wanted to do that, they could do it, and to be honest, sometimes I think maybe they should have done that. Because imagine seeing the Cave of Wonders. Imagine seeing that fantastical Agrabah castle, palace. It's a palace, John. It's not a castle. God, we have too many castles, so we probably don't need that. But still, seeing those, they'd be amazing weenies. They'd be amazing things to look at. And the Cave of Wonders would be an amazing entrance for a huge Aladdin ticket ride. But I digress. What we do have is something that's a little more rooted in reality. It's not so cartoonish. Yes, we've got genies going around on a carousel, and a carousel makes no sense in this part of the world. But hey, the details and everything, it's not all rounded off. It doesn't look like it's been taken from a cartoon movie. It looks like it's inspired by the places that inspired the movie, you know? And whilst we have no walkthrough attraction here, you really don't need one, because the area itself is stunning to walk through. There are different paths that fork off from each other. You don't feel like you're just following a crowd through. You feel like you're on your own adventure. Whether you stay next to the water and go down that way, or whether you come through the giant dome that you first saw when you got to this area, and then come down into the courtyard, you're going to be blown away by the level of theming and the spaces that they've created here. The shop adds to this, feeling like a marketplace, and this is actually where you do get to see the palace, albeit painted onto a wall, but, you know, it's giving the effect that you're in Aladdin's grotto? Living quarters? Wherever he hangs out, and you can see the palace in the distance, you know? And then as you make it through Arabian Coast, you see less and less of these grand gold palace type buildings, and things start to break down and crumble, and you get to the poorer side of Arabian Coast, and that's where the Sinbad facade is, which is just this huge rocky thing, and then they put Jasmine's flying carpets there, which makes zero sense, but the park needed more for kids to do, I suppose, and my wife and daughter like that ride, so I'm not allowed to complain about it too much. But when you get to that corner, and you look out onto the waters, and you can see Mermaid Lagoon in the distance and Mount Prometheus further from that. And even if you get above... One thing I do like Jasmine's Flying Carpets for is the views you get, especially from the balcony that they built behind it. You go up there, you can even see Tower of Terror back there, which is crazy. But yeah, Arabian Coast is an absolutely gorgeous area. I always love spending time in there. And I'm sure you would too. Okay, through this video, you've probably been wondering... When's he going to talk about Fantasy Springs? When's he going to talk about that new area that they added? Now. Now, and again, this is one where I'm like, to be honest, I ranked these when it was a bit newer. I ranked these a little while ago when it was a bit newer, and now I'm thinking, was I a bit too excited? Did I put it too high? But I think if you do take into consideration the rides and the entire area as a whole, I don't know, Fantasy Springs is a funny one because it's every other area of DisneySea is huge and cohesive and seamlessly blends into the other areas, whereas here it's very, very separate from the rest of DisneySea. It's not enhanced by the other lands at all, so it really has to stand up on its own legs. Cross that with the fact that you've got this giant, sorry if you've stayed there and you liked it, ugly hotel that's visible from so much of it, and these 3 mini lands, I mean 2 mini lands plus a Rapunzel ride, really, it gets a little bit lost. Am I talking myself out of this ranking? No, I have to bring it back. Fantasy Springs has some amazing views. It has some amazing vistas. It has some amazing points that you can stand in and look out and be like, wow, that's nice. I guess you could say it was designed for the Instagram age. It was designed for this being able to get one shot and be like, wow, that's gorgeous. Whereas the rest of DisneySea maybe stands up more on the exploration, where you can kind of walk through and discover things. Not to say that Fantasy Springs doesn't have that as well, because it does. Okay, you go into Neverland, you go through into, you see Skull Rock, and you're like, oh, I can go in there? Cool. And you go in, and you can see Smee's boat at the bottom with loads of treasure around it. And then you go into Captain Hook's pirate ship, and you can see all the dings and scratches of the sword fights that they actually had in the movie. They've put the scratches in the boat exactly where they occurred, which is just wonderful attention to detail. Wandering around Fantasy Springs is a magical experience, especially at night. And you know what? I'm reaffirming this spot in the list. You know why? Because I just remembered, where else in DisneySea can you see an amazing human animatronic singing one of the best Disney songs? I mean, it's got to be top 20. There's a lot of good Disney songs. Where else can you do that? You can't, can you? Eh? Looking up at Rapunzel, looking at the tower and being like, oh, that's her tower. And then, why is there a crowd of people over there all taking photos? What are they taking photos of? And you get over there and you're like, no, you can't see her. You can't. How do you get to see her? And you can see Rapunzel singing out there, wishing to escape from this life that she's had trapped inside this tower. That's really good. And the other thing, yeah, come on, Fantasy Springs rocks, Jordan. Let's go. The Magical Springs. I just made a video all about the Magical Springs, how incredible they are, these fountains. This is an area that you do explore. This is the opposite of what I just said about the Instagram shot, you know, the one good angle that looks good. This is an area that's made for humans to explore organically. The way that they change constantly, the colors and the way that the water features act, they're constantly evolving and changing. You never feel like you're watching like a loop. You know? You never feel like, oh, this is the end of the 1 minute loop and now I'm seeing what I've already seen. No, it's so organic and it's so magical, and trying to find all the characters and all the details is just a lot of fun. Not to mention the gorgeous soundtrack. I mean, the soundtrack carries this area to the moon. And it's one of those amazing soundtracks that is different in the daytime and at nighttime. I don't know why we don't do that more, but we should. It's really, really cool. Yeah, Fantasy Springs is dope. It's wonderful. And clearly in this list, I've put it like slap bang in the middle of the DisneySea lands. So I believe that it stands up tall amongst the rest of the park. If you've been and you think differently, you can tell me in the comments. Okay, friends, we're on to the top three. The top three areas at Tokyo DisneySea. The top three areas at Tokyo Disney Resort. Maybe the top three areas in any Disney park anywhere. Could be. These are some heavy hitters. Again, I've said it a few times, but you could put these three in any order. They're all stunning. But here's mine. Number 3, Mediterranean Harbor. My word. The way that as soon as you get into the park, you see the aquasphere. You're like, wow, that's a very impressive water feature. And then you turn right and you go under the Miracosta Hotel, which you forget is a hotel because it adds so much to the area. Yeah, you can build a hotel in a theme park area and it can add to the theming, not take away from it. Fantasy Springs Hotel. You go under the hotel and you see the best reveal in any Disney park ever. Mount Prometheus in the distance, Fortress Explorations in front of it, and you're just getting started. If you turn left, you're going to get to the Venetian gondolas, and you're going to get to this quiet corner of the park, which is a replica of Venice, which, who doesn't love Venice? You know, it's the most beautiful place I've ever been. You turn right, and you're going to go up to Soarin', and you're going to get these levels as well. You're going to go up the stairs, and you can look across, and you can see American Waterfront from the other side. It's all so expansive. And what did I say about walk-through attractions? Maybe the best one in the world, right here, Fortress Explorations. This is a labyrinth of gorgeous details that all add so much to the story of this area. This is also tied into the SEA, the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, and some people really, really love that. Some people, they may have just rolled their eyes, but you have to remember here, this is where it was created, and it wasn't this fictional group of fictional people. It was a fictional group of real people. It was celebrating real scientists, real explorers, real adventurers. And it just happened to fit into an acronym that was SEA, which, yes, is the name of the park. Very clever. Well done. Clap, 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 clap. But that gave it this mature level. That was like, wow, this is a Disney park? This is the Mickey Mouse park. Well, no, it's not. This is DisneySea. This is something different. And Mediterranean Harbor is the perfect introduction to why this park is different. What makes this park special? You're going to get these beautiful designed areas that are so detailed, that are so expansive, that you can just go back to hundreds of times and still find new things. They're going to be beautiful areas as well that are right on the water. This is where we have the harbor, you know, this is where we have our harbor shows. This is where you have the nighttime shows. And you just have a big old body of water that has boats going through it. The gondolas come through there as well. Big bits of water with things moving on it. It's good. We figured this out a while ago, you know. Big bodies of water with things moving on them is a good thing in theme parks. More of that, please. And then every time you go into a shop, every time you go into a restaurant, it adds a little bit more to this area. None of it takes away. I mean, don't look at the merch, because that would take it away. And don't go in here at the end of the day, because then it's going to be so busy that you're not going to have fun. But any other time, if you just go in and look at the theming, they all add something, you know. They all add to the story. They all add to the details. They add extra little areas for you to explore. It is a beautiful area of a park. It's sort of the quintessential DisneySea area. Like if you wanted to show someone what DisneySea is all about and you could only take them to one area, you'd take them to Mediterranean Harbor, I think. You would. If you've gone through that whole area, you're like, oh wow, okay, I get it. I get DisneySea. I get the hype. I get what everyone's talking about. One of my favorite things to do, I do this when my mum comes to visit, we always love doing it, is grabbing a glass of wine, sitting on one of the benches and just looking over the harbor. And it's one of those moments when you're like, we're here. We made it. That park that everyone said was the best one. We're here. And yes, it is. Probably the best one. If you'll forgive me for telling a little story, I'd been, and me and my mum had been to every other Disney park in the world before we got to this one. Yeah, even Shanghai. It opened that year. We went to opening. I was living in China at the time. DisneySea was the last one we needed to tick off. And it had so much hype and so much of this stuff around it. So now that I live here and we just get to go and I'm like, yeah, Mum, we're at DisneySea again. It's a great reminder, those little moments where you sit down and just look at it and you're like, we're at DisneySea again. Like, this is amazing. And once again, the original design of DisneySea, every port, every area of the park complements and is complemented by the other areas. If you get up to Mysterious Island, you start to see some Nemo stuff on the rocks, and you start to see that he's doing some tests on the volcano. It's like, oh, okay, what's over there? But more so, when you're looking across at the harbor, you're seeing Tower of Terror in the distance. You're seeing the SS Columbia. You're seeing the electric railway going by. And that's my number 2, American Waterfront. This area is just huge. The fact that they built the best Americana, the best, like, America area in a Disney park isn't in America is kind of funny at first, but also it makes sense, right? Like, Americans can go to New York, but here we have this remaking of New York. And whilst the New York area is so expansive and there's so much of it, and you can go onto the SS Columbia and you can get up there and see the whole area, see the whole park from such a vantage point, whilst also, again, the walking through the ship itself adds so much to the area. The New York area isn't even all of it. You can go across the bridge and you're in the Cape Cod, the New England area, which is so sweet. It's so nice over there. And you know what? A lot of people say, oh, they should build a Duffy ride there. This is where Duffy and Friends began. And no, I like that it's not a ride area. There's not a ride there. You go there to go there. And you can walk up to the lighthouse. Fun fact, originally, the icon of the whole park was going to be a lighthouse, but apparently Japanese guests associate lighthouses with loneliness, which, I mean, kind of makes sense. But they still snuck one into Cape Cod, and it fits perfectly there. It's very, very sweet. That whole area is gorgeous. The music, Just the ambience of it. And they always decorate it with little Duffy stuff. And I'm not a big fan of Duffy being like all over the parks. But this is his area. He can have it. It's sweet. So these two areas of American Waterfront, Cape Cod and New York, they complement each other. New York is the hustle and bustle. You've got these vehicles coming through. You've got the electric railway going over above you. There's the water fountains going off. There are all these different stalls and people selling things and all these different smells of different foods. And you can go onto the ship and head into a bar and have some drinks and some real big boy cocktails. You've got the Tower of Terror thrill ride. You've got Toy Story Mania with all the amazing lighting that goes on there at nighttime in that extra area, the Toyville Trolley Park. And then you go over to Cape Cod and it's relaxing and it's nice. And you know what? One of my favorite areas in DisneySea is on the pier. These piers are their own little areas to explore as well. And they're just lovely areas to get away from the crowds. This is the thing. Tokyo Disneyland is so well designed because everything is connected. There are no dead ends, except for Critter Country. There are basically no dead ends. So you can always get from one place to another super easily. Unfortunately, everyone else can get from one place to another super easily as well. So there are people everywhere all the time. Whereas at DisneySea, we have dead ends. We have lots of dead ends. But they're not a mistake. They're small and they're secluded. And they're areas where if you want to get away from the crowds, you can. And you can sit out on the water and have a drink, which is what I usually like to do, watch the boats going by, and even on a busy day, you're able to take a deep breath. You're able to relax and just soak up how gorgeous these areas are. American Waterfront is as huge and expansive as it is detailed. It's got some of the best food in the park. Yes, grilled Reubens, I'm looking at you. It's the only place in the whole resort where you can sit and have a cocktail in a bar, which is sweet. I mean, they kick you out after 70 minutes, but if you start loudly throwing things and threatening people, then they let you stay for a little bit longer. That's a joke. Please do not do that. Treat cast members nicely everywhere, always, please, and thank you. It's got that DisneySea maturity whilst also having fun things to do. Toy Story adds a lot. Tower of Terror adds a lot. There is just things everywhere. When you're in this area of the park, you don't know where to go next. There are just things calling you from every direction. There's a Broadway music theater that used to have a really good Broadway music show in there. But hey, it's number 2. You know why? You know why. I keep saying any of these could be number 1, and I honestly believe that, and I'm sure for some people they are. But if you've been to DisneySea, when you clicked on this video, you probably expected something to be number 1. And yeah, it is. Is it the biggest area? No. Is it the most detailed? No. Does it have the best storytelling? I mean, maybe it does. But it's just so different. It's so unique. Like I just said, American Waterfront, it's New York and Cape Cod. Nothing wrong with that. It's an amazing job of it, but it is. Mediterranean Harbor. Oh, you've got a replica of Venice. Cool. Well, I mean, it's not the real Venice, though, is it? Mysterious Island doesn't exist and couldn't exist and is an impossible place. It's when you take this fictional idea of like an imaginary place and just take it all the way and go the nth degree. Somehow, for a relatively small, relatively closed-in space, it has such an impact. Every time I go into this area, especially at night, I'm just blown away all over again. Yes, after doing it hundreds and hundreds of times, still now I am. Yes, you have one of the best rides in the world, Journey to the Center of the Earth. Yes, you have an amazing secondary ride, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Even if you don't do either of those rides, this area will be burned into your memory. You have kinetic energy of Journey going over the bridge behind you. Sometimes you hear screams coming out of there. It's not a thrilling part of the ride, but people like to scream and get attention, okay? I get it. I'm one of them. You have the transit steamer boats coming through. Yes, they go through every area, apart from Fantasy Springs. But the way that you're always looking down at them because you're on such a high level, it just makes it so much more fun and interesting. You're kind of looking up and looking down and looking at all these places. And if you are looking down at them, you may see more kinetic energy because these giant geysers are going to pop off. And when you get close to the volcano, you'll see that there's steam and smoke coming from the volcano. And you see this giant vehicle that's burrowing into it. And oh, the wheels are moving on it. Wow, they're actually doing active work right now. And hey, if you imagine in your head, where is that going? Oh, it's burrowing into this cave. Well, what if I go in the cave? You can see the other side of it. And then if you turn around, you can see where it's been burrowing into, because it's the entrance of Journey to the Center of the Earth. And you can see on the sides of the tunnel, you can see that this vehicle has been used to burrow into it. You've got the Nautilus galley. As you go down the steps, you get to see the whole area from an even lower level. You get even closer to the water, and you can look around the Nautilus. You can't go in like you can in Paris, which would have been really, really cool if you could, but you can't. But you can sit next to it and just soak up this area. You've got the Volcania restaurant, which is like a geothermal power station, but it's a restaurant. You can sit in there and listen to the old Living Seas music from Epcot, which here fits perfectly. It fits so well. It's a fantastic fit. You would have thought it was made just for this area because it's so perfect. And there's so much to here as well. The green chrome aesthetic that sort of permeates through everything. And then in the restaurant, you have like this red leather. It's that Nemo style that's so unique. It all feels like an extension of the 20,000 Leagues movie from the 50s, but it's so modern. It's like it's something that would have been impossible to do any earlier than they did it. It's a miraculous area that will stay with you forever. Anyone who's listening who's been is just nodding their head right now and grateful that they're getting to look at videos of this place to remind them of how good it was. And if you happen to be in here when the volcano is about to erupt, you see these these unique lights that start to flash, and you're like, oh, what's going on here? Because the eruption of the volcano would affect the geothermal power, right? It's getting imbalanced. The heat is heading somewhere else. So the power is affected. And then you hear, and you can feel it because you're so close. You can feel the rumble, and you can even feel the heat sometimes. And you see this huge eruption of flames right as the ride vehicles of Journey to the Center of the Earth are plummeting out of the same volcano structure. My word. Yes, I do believe that some of the earlier ones on this list could be your number one, and I totally understand why they would be. But for me, nothing gets me more excited, nothing makes me more thrilled, nothing makes me feel more certain that DisneySea is the most jaw-droppingly well-themed park in any country around the world than when I'm here in Mysterious Island. But hey, if you've been to Tokyo Disney Resort, let me know your rankings in the comment. I really love to see them. If you like this video, do subscribe to the channel. Again, please check out the Patreon. If you're interested in supporting me, that's hugely appreciated. And go ahead and watch one of these videos. YouTube thinks you'll like them, and I do too, frankly. The one on the left is really good.